a black youth choir from this church to come to one of his churches and sing, which then in the 1950s is a pretty courageous thing to do, to invite the black church to come into your white church and sing. And he did. And I wonder, did he, all those years working along the railroad, working in the blacksmith shop, did he not hear those children singing every day? And that's where he got the idea to do that. And here's the Zeb Bridge, I like to call it. Zeb was my neighbor, and we got this bridge named for him. He was probably the most decorated non-commissioned soldier to ever come out of Patton County. He was in Korea and Vietnam. He had a Silver Star, a couple of Bronze Stars. He was quite a soldier. But today at Meadowfield, where this is, the only thing left is the old Bateman house there. And that's all that's left. It might have looked like this 100 years ago. We don't think this is Meadowfield, but we think that's kind of what it would look like. Now today it's Gene Puckett's pumpkin patch. Then it might look like that. One of the things that we encountered doing this is we would run into people who, like Doris's grandmother who rode the train. We also ran into the Love brothers. I already talked about them a little bit. But this is a map that Jim Love, who has passed away now, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, he drew this because he remembered what Meadowfield looked like when he was a young man. So, he knew exactly where everything was. He tells all kinds of stories, like a coal car apparently full of coal had derailed at some point, and rather than picking it up and fixing it, they just left it. And for years, people would come over there and heat their houses with coal they took from that railroad car. I mean, all kinds of stories like this. But there you go. Jim drew that for me so that I would know exactly where the railroad was. The railroad continued on the Dan River, and today this is on Tremblin's property. It's almost a walking trail right now. If you took a weed eater down through there, you'd have a walking trail. It's in that good a shape to this day. And you can see the old railroad bed. This is the Sawmill Road. Part of it's in the Sawmill Road, part of it's along the river, just as a walking trail. And there's the gate to Tremblin, and the old road into Kibler Valley from years ago. This is the Bateman Strait. I'm sure a lot of you probably have ridden up the Bateman Strait going to Kibler Valley or to Tremblin there, and that we think is part of the old railroad. If you've already got a straightaway built, why build another? Just use the railroad. And the first version of this railroad ended right beside the Danby Presbyterian Church. We think that part of the railroad actually gave some of the material to build this church. Beautiful up there in Kibler Valley. The Epperson home there behind it, it's not the same Epperson home that was there when the railroad ran. The railroad was there up to about 1916, and the house burned about 1919. They rebuilt it, and this is the house that would have been the boarding house for men building the dams in the Dan River, things like that. But if you've ever seen this, this is one of those beautiful spots around here, is the Danby Church. Well, Anthony uncovered some rails, so we figured we might as well do something with them. So Raleigh Puckett has this cabin complex up in Ararat at the Doe Run, near the Doe Run Church. So we got about 20 or 30 foot of this rail, and Kenny got us some ties, and here we are, Team Dinky. This is Ron Hall, who wrote the book about the Hillsville Shootout. Some of you might have read, and Raleigh, and Kenny, and Nash Lawson, and the five of us went up there one day, and we rebuilt a little piece of the railroad. And that's what we're doing here. Raleigh had this great picture of Raleigh swinging a sledgehammer that I took of him. But here we are rebuilding the railroad. What most of this ended up being was Ron and Kenny arguing about how to rebuild the railroad, while Raleigh and I just sit and watch them argue about it. But there we are, and you can see a little piece of the railroad. Kenny, we measured it. It's exactly the same size and everything it would have been 100 years ago. That's what I call it, Team Dinky. And there it is today if you go up to Raleigh's cabin complex up there. I was on Roy's folks talking about this a couple of months ago. If any of you saw that, that's where we filmed most of that, was up there at Raleigh's cabin complex. Raleigh has taken a lot of old cabins, barns, and brought them over to his farm and rebuilt them. Actually bought them from people, moved them, and rebuilt them. And he's got quite a little history area going on up there. He really does. And here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Caroline Susan Bonder and Culler, 105 years old. Doris's grandmother. The last person I know to ride the Dinky Railroad. She was born the last month of Theodore Roosevelt's administration. Not Franklin Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt's administration. And when in doubt, someone once told me, if you have a question about history in Arac, Virginia, I don't know, but I bet Carrie Sue does. So I would go, and what was it, Doris? It was Pepsi's and Reese's cups.
And now pork skins.
No, pork skins. She
So
played
that's
banjo. She played banjo.
Pork skins, Reese's, and Pepsi's.
And she could play the banjo, and
So's still works on projects.
but she's over at Blue and Stewart at the Blue Ridge Nursing Home, I guess.
Yeah, she had a wound a couple years ago when she was transported from Stewart to your Mount Airy for treatment. And guy driving the bus one day mentioned that he had some pants that needed hemming, and she said, well, give them to me, I will do that. That one, she's 104.
So she is Porter's sister?
Porter's sister.
Yes, the only surviving one.
She's the only one left.
Yeah, there were 8 of them, she's the only.
She's the only one left. She's Porter's older sister.
Yeah, she was,
Older sister.
I guess, the 3rd child.
I have pictures of her from the time she's a little baby up to 105 years old. It's amazing. It seems like every time somebody with a camera came by, there she was. Now, I don't know, we may have to discuss that. There's something going on there.
Now, I don't think she would be the one to initiate that. I think that was.
I do though. I have a picture of her almost from the time she's a little baby to a little girl to a teenager. I mean, everything.
Me too. You got that on me, so do I.
Need to do a book about her.
Well, I tried to do a book about
He
her.
wanted to.
I wanted to do a book about her. She's kept journals for years and years and diaries, and I always imagine what it says about me in those journals. I can just see it now. And Perry Boy came to see me again. I wonder if anything he says is true. But I tell you what now, if you want a straight answer, she will give you a straight answer. And you may not like it, but she will answer your question. I promise you. But we recorded her talking about the railroad. I gave a copy of it to the family. But she is something else, let me tell you. But you talk about kids scoff at talking to old people. I was weird. I was in my 20s and 30s going over and talking to her because Theodore Gwynn would tell me he didn't know, but I bet Carrie Sue does. And off I go. And she's told me all sorts of things I don't remember. But the last person I know still alive that rode the railroad.
But it's accurate too, the things she tells,
Yeah.
If you can search it or way, you can verify it. It's true.
Yeah, she's usually right on money. She's amazing, but she lived through it, so of course she is. So one of the last things Kenny and I did, we were invited to Danube Church to talk about the railroad on their Heritage Day. It's hard to find a Bible verse about an air gauge railroad, I'll tell you. That's just digging. But here it is from Matthew. And this railroad, like I said, came right by and ended at the church. And we think the railroad helped them to at least supply some of the things to build this church.
There was a turnaround, is that where it ended, a turnaround?
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Okay.
The way railroads, let's see,
Was that rock, is that at the church, close to the church?
now the rock is up above the church on the Dan River. When the dams are built, you lose a lot of that stuff. There were swimming holes and things. We used to go up there and swim in the Dan River, and there'd be rocks like that, and rattlesnakes, and just all kinds of stuff. But when they, and I don't think the water ever gets very warm. But that's a picture, I think that's underwater probably now. I bet that's probably underwater. But we also have this old picture of the church when it was wooden, just to show you how they come. What they did at the ends of the railroad, at the Dan River and down here on Riverside, they had what they call a Y, a W-Y-E. And what it looked like was a triangle, where they could back the train up, pull it forward, and turn it around. And it's kind of like a triangle-shaped thing. the tracks coming out of either side, and that's the way they turn the train around. So they get up here to Kibler, and they go into the Y, and they back it up the river, and about where Barnes store, a little bit above Barnes store, they loaded up the timber, and the railroad train would pull out going forward again, just like it would come in, turn around. And that's how they turned it around. They had that, we think, down here Riverside Drive too. Down here, they would just pull up beside the main line. They either take it right, they come right by the furniture factory or the lumber company, or they take it right to the main line railroad, unload and load onto the railroad. Of course, that railroad's still here. They don't use it anymore, but it's still there on Riverside Drive. So the Dinky pulled up right beside it, is what we think. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. But this is the Mount Airy Eastern Railroad. It's been 100 years right now. Oh, one more thing. Happy birthday, Ringo. He's 74 today. So there's your useless Beatle information for the day. All right, well, thank y'all very much.
Tom, did the people let you walk through the land, did they already know where it was, or did you didn't discover parts of it that they didn't know about already?
Almost everybody whose property we walked across knew exactly where on the property the railroad had gone, and as soon as you got to the neighbor's property line, they could care less. It's just on their property, they knew pretty close where it was. And Kenny had studied maps, and we had done a little reconnaissance on this thing, and we knew it's never going to be very far from the Ararat, Clark's Creek, Fall Creek, and the Dan River, because it's got to be near water. It has to be near water. So, but the thing that saved me was I grew up there, and my father had everybody in school. So I would walk up and say, I'm Tom Perry, I'm Gary Perry's son. Well, come on in, how's your daddy? And so that's what we did. But we never once had anybody tell us we couldn't come across the property. Anybody else?
So what's the name of this church again?
Danube Presbyterian. Danube. Kibler Valley used to be Danube. It's Kibler today because the man named Kibler is the one who came in and did all the timber and lumber business. And so he was Kibler K out of West Virginia, was his company. And its name changed. I think people started referring to him as Kibler rather than Danube. No Venetian waltzes up in Kibler Valley, I guess.
I was thinking about the mountains and how, what a feat it was to build a railroad track from here to from down there.
Well, yeah, in a way, but they never get very far from a river or a creek, and when they get up and hit the wall of the Blue Ridge up there at the Kibler, they stop.
They stopped.
They stop. Now, there were all kinds of different versions of this. They were going to try to build a railroad from Stewart over this way and cut through what we call Dobbs, and they were going to use the part of the line of the Mount Airy Eastern as the connector there, but they could never. They surveyed it, but they could never really get it going because of the money. This railroad was known as the Virginia and North Carolina Railroad. It had 3 or 4 different names, multiple owners, and they'd always get in financial trouble. And look, I talk about, some years they made $5 profit for a year, or they lost money for a year. So they never could really seem to get it going. But it did other things. The funny one I love to tell, usually in this program, is right here around the church, the railroad brought a circus to Kibler Valley. If you ever go to the Mount Airy Museum and look at their railroad diagram in the back, they show where the circus came to Kibler Valley. And these people at Kibler Valley have never seen an elephant before. They're scared of the day. And, they actually had a circus there around that church.
What's next for you?
I actually have a couple of new books. I have a book about Surrey County and the Civil War that's a little older than this. I don't have any with me because I went to West Jefferson and sold them all last weekend. I've got a new book about my friend David Mentor, who's from Martinsville, who was in Korea. His son was in Iraq and Afghanistan, and his father was on Omaha Beach during D-Day. So 3 or 4 generations of his family have been black on the railroad. That's my newest book. It's about David. I'm doing a couple of ghostwriting projects now. I'll tell you about these. So this is fun stuff. Got it in the mail this morning. David Brown, who does Barney Fife, is writing a book about being Barney Fife. Guess who his ghostwriter is. So if that's not bad enough, and actually that's actually pretty funny. David told Aunt Eloise. Anybody ever remember Aunt Eloise on WTQR? Well, Aunt Eloise is now on 98.1 up there in Daylights. Aunt Eloise now is wanting me to ghostwrite a book with him, her, it, whatever she is. And we're working on that too. So I'm working with Barney Fife and Aunt Eloise at the same time. I may have to start drinking. But when I go on the radio with Eloise, I go on there once in a while. He now plays Ghost Riders in the Sky. Instead of Ghost Rider in the Sky, Ghost Rider in the Sky. I'm not making that up. You couldn't make that up. But David's book is actually, you think a man who goes around doing Barney Fife, it would be just all fun and games, but it's actually a very serious book. I know you wouldn't believe it. He's actually a very deep fellow. He thinks a lot. He's kind of a trained actor. He's put 3 children through college, being Barney Fife, so you can't hardly argue with it. So his book is interesting.
I saw him in Great Lincoln. I saw him in Lincoln one time.
He's done Shakespeare. He says the dumbest thing he ever did was Robert Porterfield of the Barter wanted him to come and work at the Barter when he was young, and he turned him down. I said to him, David, Kevin Spacey didn't turn him down. Gregory Peck didn't turn him down, but you turned Robert Porterfield down. Yeah. He said, I've not been big. So I don't know how to get into these things. And I didn't tell her to ask that question either. I don't know these things. But I never stop writing a book. I've always got 2 or 3 going at the same time. It's a job. If you want to be successful at it, you got to work. You got to work at it pretty good. But I've just about run out of everything Doris's grandmother told me, so I might actually have to research something.
I guess you have to stop me with my mom.
Yeah. I'm afraid of her. I'm afraid of her.
A lot of people are.
But writing history is fun. You run into things. We were talking about this before. Dr. Gerald, a lot of you probably knew Dr. Gerald. Dr. Gerald grew up with my good friend Theodore William. Theodore died in December last year. And Doris's mom all graduated high school together. I would, young people don't want to hang around old people sometimes, but not me. I love it. You find out some of the darndest things hanging around somebody like that. One day I was sitting at Dr. Gerald's kitchen table with him. His health was declining. He wasn't doing too good. Theodore, when me and Theodore go see Dr. Gerald. Well, they get talking about World War II. Theodore was in the Navy, World War II. He'd been in the Atlantic. He was on an aircraft carrier. Didn't really see a lot of action. He said he got lucky. He was in the Atlantic. Well, Dr. Gerald pipes up and says, I was a Marine medic in the Pacific. And I said, really? I didn't know that. He said, yeah. I said, well, where were you in the Pacific? He said, oh, I was on Iwo Jima. Just casual. I said, you what? He said, I was on Iwo Jima. And I said, would you see the flag raising? He said, yeah, I saw it twice. And I knew you had been on Iwo Jima because they raised it twice. And Gerald had been a Marine medic in Iwo Jima. I'd never heard him mention it before. But because I was with Theodore, he told me all about it. He saw some rough stuff. But anyway, there's this one thing.
Well, how nice that you're putting some of this down while some of these sources have been around still. Instead, everybody says, I wish I had, too late a lot of times.
Well, I wish we'd gotten Grandma to let us write a book, but she won't let us do it. She won't let us do
We'll
it.
just take it after she has.
I think she's already written her own book, and we're just going to have to suffer through what she wrote about us.
Do publish my story. Yeah, she has kept diaries and records, so we'll have those.
But think about it, she was born when Theodore Roosevelt was president of the United States. That's amazing. Not Franklin, Theodore Roosevelt. Think I read that?
So I guess Doris, we expect you to be around a long time too. We'll expect you to be around a long time